so they hit it off instantly. I didn't mind him, he seemed nice, and I trusted my wife. But on the day of the party, when he arrived, I noticed a change in her demeanor. Her eyes lit up, and she rushed to greet him with a longer hug than she gave anyone else. While others didn't seem to notice, I did, and it felt like something was brewing between them. I needed to confirm my suspicions, so I pretended to go to the bathroom but sneaked into the bedroom to check her laptop. It was harder to access than her phone, as she was always using it whenever I was home. Whenever I asked her what she was doing on her laptop, she'd deflect and claim she was working on her novel, a project she'd been immersed in for months. I respected her privacy and believed her, thinking she was genuinely focused on her writing. But now, with suspicions rising, I doubted there was a novel at all. It seemed more like an excuse to keep me from seeing her screen. Luckily, there was no password, though I could easily access it. After some searching, I discovered another email account she had. I switched to it and found a trove of emails exchanged between her and our neighbor. They were full of love confessions from both sides, and in the more recent ones, she told him about her pregnancy. He didn't take the news well, leading to a pause in their correspondence, likely because he wanted to end things. But my wife wasn't ready to give up on him. Then I received the most shocking email of all. She told him she'd consulted a lawyer friend about filing for divorce right after the baby's birth. She admitted that the reason she pushed for a baby was to secure alimony and child support, enabling her to leave me for our neighbor shortly after and start a new life with him. Reading that email filled me with horror, and even now, the sickening feeling returns whenever I think about it. Pushing aside my emotions, I focused on the task at hand. I discreetly took several photos of the incriminating email with my phone before shutting down her laptop and returning it to its place. While the infidelity hurt, what disgusted me most was her calculated plan to deceive me. Cheating was one thing, but manipulating me into parenthood to finance her fantasy life with her lover was beyond comprehension. And to top it all off, she played the role of a happy wife so convincingly that I hadn't suspected a thing. Her joy seemed almost unsettling, but my anger drove me to seek revenge. I resolved to bide my time and reveal the truth when she least expected it. I couldn't let her off the hook without experiencing the pain, betrayal, and frustration I endured upon discovering her deceit. Some might call me vengeful, but I felt it was necessary. So for the next 9 months, I played the part of the perfect husband and soon-to-be father. It was challenging knowing she was lying to my face, but her deception only fueled my determination. I accompanied her to every doctor's appointment, ensured she took her vitamins, and portrayed the ideal partner. Then finally, a few days ago, my wife went into labor. Adding insult to injury, she was such a skilled actress that I hadn't suspected a thing. Her facade of happiness was almost eerie, but my anger drove me to seek retribution. I resolved to play along and then deliver the crushing blow when she least expected it. There was no way I would let her escape the consequences without experiencing the pain, betrayal, and frustration I felt upon discovering her deception. Some might label me as unstable, but I felt justified in my actions. For the next 9 months, I meticulously portrayed the role of the perfect husband and expectant father. It was difficult knowing she was deceiving me, but her falsehoods only fueled my determination. I attended every doctor's appointment, ensured she took her vitamins punctually, and endeavored to be the ideal spouse. Then, finally, just a few days ago, my wife went into labor. My heart raced as I left the hospital, feeling like I might need a hospital bed myself. I quickly dialed our neighbor to let him know my wife was in labor, not bothering to wait for his response before hanging up. Jumping into my car, I waited anxiously for my wife's family to arrive. As soon as I spotted her dad's car pulling into the driveway, I wasted no time in getting out of there. I turned off my phone and drove until I reached a motel on the outskirts of town. I'd already packed my bags weeks ago and stashed them in the trunk, ensuring I had everything I needed and wouldn't be caught off guard. The rest of the day was spent trying to distract myself with TV and beer, anything to escape the turmoil. Eventually, I drifted off to sleep, feeling a sense of relief that the charade was finally over. The next morning, I woke up and reluctantly turned on my phone. Predictably, there were countless messages from my wife and our neighbor, all of which I ignored. However, I did glance at texts from my parents and brother. It seemed my wife had reached out to them when she couldn't reach me. Feeling a sense of obligation, I called my parents to reassure them and promised to explain everything once I returned home. I even asked them to bring my brother along, as they deserved to understand the situation fully. I drove over to my parents' place, finding my brother already there along with our confused and somewhat irritated parents. Understandably, they were upset because I had missed the birth of my own child, which also meant they missed becoming grandparents in the moment. Sitting them down, I laid out the entire story, explaining my actions and reasoning behind them. By the time I finished, they were left speechless. I braced myself for a barrage of questions and accusations, but surprisingly, there were none. My dad simply expressed a hope that things wouldn't escalate further, and if the others had anything to say, they kept quiet. It seemed things were calm on that front. This happened a few days ago, and although my family hasn't said much, my wife has been relentless in blaming me for ruining her first-time mother experience. She's been calling and texting nonstop since I left, but I've chosen not to respond. Even my neighbor had the nerve to text me a few hours ago, pleading for us to put our differences aside for my wife's sake and attempt to reconcile. It's unbelievable how they're trying to downplay the seriousness of the situation. He even mentioned that my wife had supposedly rekindled her feelings for me during her pregnancy, which supposedly surprised both of them. But I saw right through that deception. If she was falling for me again, why was he still in the picture? They must think I'm incredibly naive. My wife may be upset, but I'm not about to be manipulated into giving our marriage another chance. She's mostly angry because she believes I knew everything from the start but chose to stay with her and pretend everything was fine. She accuses me of deceiving her by remaining with her throughout her pregnancy, despite knowing the baby wasn't mine and that she'd been cheating with our neighbor. Update 1. It's been almost a week since the baby arrived, and I've been holed up in a hotel room. I haven't visited my wife, nor do I plan to. Despite my clear stance, she continues to bombard me with texts and calls. I haven't blocked her yet, but I've cut off communication with our neighbor, who's been trying to persuade me to reconcile with her. I'm convinced he's only doing it to secure a share of any divorce settlement or alimony, given their financial dependency. While I appreciated my wife being a homemaker, her infidelity is unforgivable. Contrary to accusations, I didn't push her to quit her job. It was her decision, and I supported it. I'm confident my lawyer can exempt me from alimony once her infidelity is proven, which should be straightforward. As for our neighbor, he's still struggling professionally, so supporting my wife, a baby, and himself will be challenging. Frankly, I'm relieved to be out of this mess and won't give them anything, not even my attention. I hope my wife sees reason and doesn't contest the divorce, but I'm prepared if she does. I've safeguarded evidence of her deceit, ensuring I'm protected legally. Even as she deletes her email account, I have copies of incriminating exchanges. I'm willing to pay alimony if necessary, but I refuse to stay with her. Despite owning the house, I'm giving her time to leave voluntarily. Hopefully, this ordeal will soon be behind me. Update 2. As expected, my wife's lack of sense has led her to reject the settlement I offered, which I found quite generous considering it covered her expenses during our marriage. I'm baffled by what she hopes to achieve, but it's her choice. Yesterday, she texted to say she's left the house. Today, I returned hoping she'd moved in with her parents. Disappointingly, she's moved across the street to our neighbor's house. I'll have to endure seeing them daily now. I briefly considered returning to a hotel but decided against it. This is my home, and I won't be driven out. I wondered why she didn't move in with her parents, a move that would have favored her in the divorce case. However, her father's text shed some light on the situation. He apologized for her actions and assured me they don't condone them. He even mentioned cutting her off after she expressed a desire to contest the divorce. Her irrational behavior continues to baffle me. Surely, she must realize her actions will backfire. Either she's foolish or has sinister intentions. I hope it's not the latter, but with her, I wouldn't be surprised. Despite the complications this living arrangement brings, I refuse to let them provoke me. Thankfully, I'm saving money by not staying in a hotel. It's been a month since negotiations began, and so far, things aren't looking good for my wife. I've gathered evidence of her infidelity. Update 3. It's been a month since the divorce negotiations started, and things aren't looking good for my wife. I've solidly proven her infidelity, especially since she's now living with the man I accused her of cheating with, providing undeniable evidence of my claims. She attempted to fabricate accusations, claiming I was an alcoholic and the reason for my infertility, suggesting that her affair was justified due to my supposed cruelty during our attempts to conceive. However, his claims were easily disproven, as I quit drinking a year ago when we decided to start a family. It's puzzling why she thought such flimsy excuses would hold up. Perhaps her failed initial plan left her desperate, or perhaps motherhood has consumed her attention, leaving no room for scheming. Regardless, both of us understand her slim chances of receiving alimony. It seems she may have relayed this to her boyfriend, as she was recently ousted from his home, along with their child, amid a tumultuous scene of screaming and name-calling. From my living room window, I witnessed the unsettling scene unfold. The moment I saw him forcibly eject my wife while she held our baby, I cast aside any animosity and rushed to their aid. I couldn't bear to see an innocent child suffer for faults that weren't his own. By the time I reached their doorstep, it was already shut, leaving my wife and son in tears. I swiftly scooped up the baby and reached for my wife's hand, leading them back to my house across the street. With a quick call to my father-in-law, arrangements were made for her to return home. In the following hour, amidst tears and sobs, I comforted both mother and child, playing the role of a comforting presence. Despite my initial urge to involve the authorities, my wife persuaded me to let it pass, not wanting further trouble. She expressed profound remorse for her actions, citing her desperation to be with her lover as the cause for her lapse in judgment. She assured me of her readiness to accept the consequences and forego any further negotiations to expedite the divorce proceedings. While I hope she finds the strength to pursue justice and heal from this ordeal, I take solace in knowing I acted with decency and harbor no regrets.